After 2 years and more than 80,000 views on YouTube, I figured that it was high time that I update one of the most watched videos in my channel. Hello everybody, this is the Chattering Magpie here to talk about Ascendance of a Bookworm, ships. This video will not only update all the ships in the original video, but we will also go through some of the ships that I did not include for reasons. And finally, this video is light novel safe, so you don't have to worry about massive endgame spoilers. I had a blast talking about each one of these ships with some of the bookworms on my Discord server as we brainstormed everything we could remember about these ships. The full conversations that we did are going to be available for members only on my Ko-fi page, so be sure to visit there. It's 4 hours of bookworm goodness, so do check it out if you want to support me as well. Alright, let's do this. Ascendance of a Bookworm, ships. The updated version. Lutz Tuuli. Look at these two. Aren't they adorable? Even Myne shipped them. There really isn't much to update on this ship, because early on we already saw troubling signs that this ship was doomed to fail. And now that the light novel is at part 5 and both these characters have come of age, we know for sure that this ship is absolutely impossible.
Oh my god, that ship is totally sank. It's like Atlantis.
It's completely dead. There was no chance of this happening ever.
Not only does she move in totally different spheres than Ralph does, but both of them already have their significant others and are engaged. While there was some kind of awkwardness between the brothers at some point in the story over Tuuli, thankfully Ralph has managed to move on, so all is good. In the original video, I very briefly teased the Tuuli Benno ship. Given the fact that there's such a vast difference in age, in status, in temperament, it just seemed like a stretch. Like something that some feverish, fanficky brain cooked up and decided to put out there in the universe.
I think it was like a first crush thing. So it was sweet, but it never would have worked.
Yet, it is canon. Tuuli caught feelings for Mr. Benno at some point, though ironically enough, it was Lutz who made her aware of these feelings of hers. Don't worry, Tuuli, I totally don't blame you for crushing on Benno, and though your heart gets smashed to smithereens, I do believe that you ended up with somebody way better for you. I must confess, Lutz Tuuli took some getting used to. I love both these characters so much, and the fact that they ended up with each other felt like they were settling for second best. But this only shows just how shallow my understanding of the bookworm world was at that time. If you haven't watched my video on love and romance in the bookworm world, I highly suggest that you check it out. In it, I explored what makes relationships work in the bookworm universe. Bookworm is not a romance novel, but it does feature relationships, both good and bad, and goes to great lengths to show characteristics of successful relationships. And when you take those into consideration, then the Lutz Tuuli ship is actually full of green flags. They're both from similar backgrounds, and they both have an incredible work ethic. Lutz knows her family and mine and all the secrets that they're all keeping. And they're both in a position to follow Rozemyne when she leaves Ehrenfest. It is important to note, though, that it's not just that they are good for one another, they actually need each other. The marriage pool for someone like Lutz, who is climbing up from the slums, is incredibly limited. He has to marry somebody who is merchant class. However, all the girls and the families of merchant class would look down on him because of his origins. So he's caught in a Daniel-like situation. The same goes for Tuuli. She can't marry up. In fact, she's a little bit worse off because our poor girl needs somebody to protect her. She's so skilled and talented that as one of Rozemyne's favorite artisans, she would have been stolen away by unscrupulous merchants, were it not for the fact that she was already an engaged woman. So all in all, the relationship actually works for everyone involved. In the epilogue for Part 5, Volume 6, we get to see a small glimpse of Lutz as he returns to Ehrenfest after a prolonged stay in another town. He visits Tuuli and they catch up. She reacts adorably to his gentle teasing, and then he offers her a gift that she really, really likes and makes it evident that he pays attention to those small details. Good job, Lutz. It is obvious to us that they're off to a great start. It makes sense, their families are happy, they are content. What else can we ask for? Though, I would not be one to complain if Kazuki-sensei ended up writing a little short story about their marriage years. I want them to be disgustingly happy and in love. And while we're on the topic of disgustingly happy and in love, whenever I think of lovey-dovey couples, two of them come to mind right away. The first is Gunther Effa. By far one of my favorite stories is the one where Effa is reflecting upon the past and how she and Gunther ended up married. Though he might not look it on the outside, Gunther is actually quite the dreamer and romantic. And it is because of this quality that he decided to become a soldier, and that was how he ended up meeting her. Taking a cue from songs and stories of chivalrous knights and how they professed their love to their lady by offering a face stone, Gunther went down on his knee and proposed to Effa in the exact same way, a gesture that succeeded in capturing Effa's heart. Gunther and Effa's marriage is consistently shown as one of the most healthy, most functional marriages in Bookworm. Gunther is a devoted husband and a protector through and through, and Effa is a caring, loving wife. And while they're not perfect and they have experienced their fair share of personal tragedies, they work together to overcome all these difficulties.
I see the relationship, the entire family, to be honest, is all about his goals. Relationship goals all around.
The second of all the lovey-dovey couples in Bookworm that we absolutely love is Otto and Corinna. Much like Gunther likes to brag about his family and how cute his daughters are, Otto is an absolute simp for his wife and tends to talk the ear off Benno and anybody who will listen to him as he rants and raves on how beautiful and how amazing and perfect his wife is. And this only gets worse when their first baby is born.
They are absolutely cute.
The fact that Otto would upheave all his plans because he saw Corinna at first sight and is just like, oh my god, I must marry her, no matter what. And he fulfilled the conditions required to stay and do so.
He worked for it. Corinna was trying to escape the guildmaster's sons. When he was going to marry, he had to give up on his dream of being a merchant. He married her, even though he had to give up his dream, and Corinna felt guilty about that.
I think part of the reason Benno allowed Otto to marry Corinna was just out of the fact it was to prevent the guildmaster from, proceeding forward.
While it is true that he had to put his mercantile dreams on hold, in the end it all works out, and this reverse Cinderella story does have its happily ever after. Another lower city couple that is worth mentioning again and updating is Hugo Ella.
It's sad because in the anime they're really much in the background, and you don't see the relationship build up as we do in the light novels. They end up getting married together, and Ella's, I believe, pregnant.
I talked in depth about Hugo and his struggles as a bachelor trying to find the right girl to marry. And I also went into Ella's aspirations as a cook and how she wanted to escape a bleak future as a waitress.
Commoners who work in the kitchens, they start off as waitresses in the lower city, and waitresses are expected to do certain things for their clients.
Yeah.
It started with Ella admiring his cooking prowess and how, Hugo is very competent in the kitchen. That admiration turned to, affection.
Second year, she found out that she was pregnant and she had to take some time off work. And then now during her third year, she's already given birth and she has to leave.
Not only has Ella given birth to their baby, but she's able to continue and pursue her career thanks to her mother, who is responsible for taking care of their little baby. After having worked such a rough job in the taverns as a waitress, Ella's mother can at last retire. Our discussion of Lower City ships would not be complete if I didn't round it all out with one of our most beloved characters, Mr. Benno. 2 years ago when I made the original video, the light novel's progress was such that it hadn't been more than a few volumes since Myne had become Rozemyne. All the original Lower City gang, especially Benno, were still fresh in our minds. Season 3 hadn't yet aired, and of course Season 3 included this very important and very hilarious scene where they're both confused as a father and daughter duo. Perhaps it was because of this scene or just because the way the story has evolved, but I don't believe that there are many people who are seriously invested in this ship. If anything, there are only Benno fans, and I absolutely agree with them. I also am a very big Benno fan. Despite the fact that this is a very questionable age gap, in canon it did have its supporters. First there was Otto, who just loved to tease Benno about it, and of course the incomparable Corinna.
Obviously, during that perspective, she was joking, of course, but
Or was she?
I'm pretty sure she was.
Well, we have people like friggin' Gustav. Like, he totally is like, hey, I'm gonna come in and I'm gonna marry my way into your company. Like, nah. But people do that. I'm not saying I agree or like it or anything. I'm just saying, in this Bookworm world, I could see a potential outline where Benno's just like, cool, I'm gonna take ownership over that gremlin, so no one else gets her. But like, the Benno we know is not that type of guy.
So, say for example, if Gustav had been like, I'm gonna make Myne marry one of my grandsons, one of Frida's brothers.
Yeah.
If something like that had happened, then Benno would be like, okay, so I'm probably like gonna be her best case scenario for like keeping her away from these people. I mean, they have a good dynamic, but it's just not the thing.
There must be no romance in this situation.
Yeah.
It'd just be to protect Myne, make sure that she stays safe. Or more like father-daughter.
Father-daughter or like business associates. I see father-daughter a lot. Besides, why would we ever want to ship Benno with Myne when there was a far less problematic ship around to give us hope that perhaps he could find love at long last? Karin, the Klassenberg merchant's daughter, came into his life like a whirlwind. When Erfes opened its doors to Klassenberg merchants, her father concocted a Machiavellian plan to leave her behind and force Benno to take care of her for an entire year. Not only was she an extremely skilled merchant, but she also seemed to vibe really well with Benno. Unfortunately, this relationship was not to be. Despite the fact that a marriage with a Klassenberg merchant was seen as a very desired thing, since it would mean forging stronger connections with greater duchies, in the guildmaster's point of view at least. This also meant that by marrying Benno, she would have been closer to finding out some of Erfes' best-kept secrets, including Rozemyne's identity. And there was no guarantee that she wouldn't feed this information to her folks back home. And even though they seemed to work along great, and she had never even been in on her father's plot, when the year was up, Benno sent her packing back home. That doesn't mean that he didn't catch feelings though. In the short story featuring Tuuli's point of view, where she realizes that she has fallen for Benno, she only does so because she sees how Benno looks at Karin. She had never, ever before seen him look at a woman like that.
Had circumstances been different, it maybe had worked. But Benno had already lost the love of his life by that point. And considering the whole, we can't let these secrets get out concerning the business and whatnot, it was kind of destined to fail.
Yeah.
I really wish that it had sprouted fruit, but I mean, as we all said, it wasn't to be.
After all, many Bookworm fans would agree that Mark Benno is a far more viable ship. Is it Mark Benno or Benno Mark?
Mark Benno.
Really?
When it comes to ship names that aren't like amalgamations of both of their names together, I tend to put the name of the person giving the affection the most in front, and then the person receiving on the back of the name,
Hmm.
which is why I said Mark Benno.
Mark Benno.
The way he services his master without a second doubt. Like, he's the one putting all the effort into this romance. Whether it's a proper relationship or not, he's putting in all the effort. Benno's just very much appreciative of him being there, but I think in their in their service of now, they both rely on each other, so it's a platonic relationship more than anything else. They're a nice swan paddle boating down the river.
And I even talked about this in the previous video. Loyal, steadfast, wise and reliable, not to mention fierce. Mark is Benno's right-hand man who has stuck with him for years and is set to follow him upon their move from Ehrenfest. In fact, this question about their future up to their old age has already been answered by Kazuki-sensei. In Twitter, after a fan asked about it, the author replied that Benno would definitely take care of Mark as he was his employee. Rozemyne would pretty much be useless. She would, no doubt good-naturedly, offer to build them a nursing home, and he would flatly reject that idea. Don't treat me like an old man. Let's see. The next one we talked about.
Lutz Tuuli.
No. Lutz Rozemyne.
Totally. The
Yeah.
ship that never sailed.
It sailed probably a little bit and then it got stuck in a sandbank.
No, they built it. It's still in the dry dock. It just never left, because
Really?
all the parts were there. They was just like, hey, he's a very supportive young man. He believes in her dreams. She believes in his. They were gonna, if things didn't happen at the end of part 2, things could have easily went that way, disregarding all the fact we know about mana mixing. In that what if continuity where Kazuki Sensei didn't write all that other background stuff we know, it could have easily have been a Lutz Myne sort of end game, but they didn't, because their paths diverged, they split, and I'm thankful for it.
It's an example of absolutely wonderful platonic friendship, as it should be. Whenever Lutz and Myne as a couple comes up, I always think about Josef and Heidi as a sort of analog to what Lutz and Myne would have been together as a married couple. However, like I pointed out in the previous video, even though this couple is excellent for a few laughs here and there, it ultimately makes me really, really happy that Lutz and Myne didn't end up together. In the short story featuring Josef's point of view, it is plain to see that marriage to Heidi is far from easy. She is not a bad person in the slightest. She's just hyper-focused, often fails to be considerate of her husband and others, and in general behaves like a child. So much so that he earns the sympathy of those around him for having to be the one tasked with controlling her, and is forever running after her to keep her from trouble or cleaning up after her rampages. The poor man at some point is contemplating divorce, yet he is irrevocably tied to Heidi and the workshop. Later, when Myne agrees to fund their future research, Heidi rejoices, but Josef is absolutely distraught.
He's absolutely miserable.
He really is.
Joseph is absolutely miserable. He loves his life and everything, but when she goes on a rampage,
Yeah.
Hey, you know what? Fair.
Yeah, it's like you don't have a spouse, you have another child to take care of. I
You're a
don't.
gremlin.
Yeah, I know. It's just no. Still, not all is bad. Heidi and Josef are expecting their first baby. I am sure that soon enough we'll have another little Heidi running around, curiously exploring the world and driving her poor exhausted father nuts. And to round out the numbers of all the lower city ships and couples are two of Rozemyne's Gutenbergs. The first, Johann, is someone we already knew from the anime. The second is Zack, whom anime onlys will meet when part 3 is animated. The question of their future arises when Rozemyne is forced to leave Ehrenfest. Planning to take, if possible, her Gutenbergs, she asks them what their plans are, whether they're gonna follow her or stay in Ehrenfest. Johann has some kind of understanding with his foreman's granddaughter. At first, he wasn't sure whether he was going to be able to follow Rozemyne. However, turns out that the granddaughter chose Danilo, another young blacksmith, not Johann, as Danilo was more approachable and was a good conversationalist, whereas Johann was quiet and always focused on his work. Rozemyne sympathizes with Johann, but she figured that Johann is an acquired taste. As to the second Gutenberg, Zach is happily married with a girl who shares his same eagerness for going to other places and seeing the world. So like Johan, both Zach and his wife will get to accompany Rozemyne when she leaves Ehrenfest. This concludes the video covering the ships and couples in the lower city. Covering the entire Bookworm roster is gonna take me some time, so I hope that you enjoyed this one and are looking forward to the next video when I cover Ehrenfest nobility. So if you feel a little salty that in my first video I didn't cover Elvira or Hartmut or even the incomparable Angelica, don't you worry, I'm gonna get to them. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to like, share and subscribe. And if you would like to support your Magpi financially, you can follow the links on my description for my Ko-fi and merch store. Until then, bye bye.